Hi, it's Dia. Today I'm going to be drawing a picture from one of my coloring books called Penelope's Garden. And the picture that I'm going to do is very similar to the cover, as you can see here. And what I'm going to do is color the picture twice. I'm going to use very similar colors, but I want to show you what the difference is if you take some time. So many people think, oh, I can't color. Mine doesn't come out like yours or somebody else's. The first color I used here, by the way, is from Polychromos. Faber Castell Polychromos, and it was violet. And then I used light flesh, and for her dress was light red violet. Here's medium flesh for her cheeks. I'm doing it very simply. And this is, I can never remember this color. Yellow lemon. Oh, cadmium yellow lemon. I'm using some basic browns for the broom and for the broomstick. But back to what I was saying. There's literally nothing wrong with what I'm doing here. But so many people look at something like this and say, why isn't it finished? Why isn't it as good as somebody else's? And I would say almost 99 times out of 100, it's not that there's anything wrong with it, like I said before. It's just that you're not done. Now here's the first picture. Cute, but not done. All I'm doing here is testing colors. The first color I used on this was violet, and I was testing it next to mauve because I wanted to use the lighter ones on the edge of the hat. Now in the center of the hat, my first idea was to have her all in purple, and you'll see at the end that I do change it and make her hat a little bit different from your typical hat. Yes, it ends up black, but there's a little twist to it. Anyway, so with this hat, I'm adding now a little bit of dimensional lines. I put the violet highlights where I thought the hat might bubble up a little bit, or there might be a little bump, and around the perimeter and where the hat's drooping a little tiny bit, I also added violet. Now this mauve, although to me it looks like beautiful purple, mauve to me is a different color, but that's what color it is in Polychromos. Is the body of the hat, and then I go back and forth between light red violet for the highlights and the violet. The hat bends over a bit, so there'll be natural wrinkle lines, and I did indicate them when I drew, but it's nice to even accentuate them when you color. You could see on the edges of the hat also where I thought the light might reflect, I left it a little bit lighter. Now underneath the band there and above the band, I made it a little bit darker. Now here I'm taking just the white pencil and I'm blending it in. I'm not pushing too hard, I'm not going to burnish yet, but I'm blending it all in to see how the colors are working out. And I like them so far. I'm not in love with them yet, but I think they look nice. The light red violet is once again going in the areas where I thought the creases and bends would pick up the sun some more. And now I'm going back in once again and going over the darker areas of the hat. So you can see I probably spent more time on this hat already than I did on the entire other picture. When you use colored pencils, you don't really have to push hard. when you start out because you're building layers. Now, if you notice, right in the center of the hat, I left it a little bit lighter, meaning all the way down the middle, because in my head, in this picture, there's light coming from all different directions. You can't see it here, but there's a little lantern in front of her, and there's the moon in the sky and some fireflies. Now, just like the first picture, I'm using light flesh here for her skin. I'm not really detailing it too much. I'm just getting that first very light layer down. Penelope's head is very round. She's a cartoon character, and after I put the light flesh, I went up to the medium flesh and put it on the perimeter of her face and also under her chin and anywhere that the face might need to recede, like around the nose, under her neck, because darker colors give the illusion of the picture or the area of the picture receding, and light parts or light colors bring things forward. Making the area darker around the perimeter, like I said, and over by her nose, under her nose, not quite a shadow, because I have in my head the light coming from the front. So the darker areas around the edges to give the illusion of a curve in her face. I'm going over again with the light flesh to blend the darker with the lighter. Now here I made a mistake. I used warm gray underneath her hat because I wanted to make a shadow. That's a big hat. It sort of droops forward, but that warm gray, it was too close to brown, and to me shadows are cooler, either purple, and so that will be the bane of existence for the next at least few minutes in this picture. See here I am going over it with a violet color to try to take some of the warmth out. For a second there, I thought I was going to make her eyes looking over to the left, but I changed my mind, and I figured at the end I would come in with some highlights. She's modeled after my sister, who had these big brown eyes, and I like to leave them like big cute button eyes. And I'm going back in again. Now I'm using dark flesh. So there's a couple layers at this point of skin tone. And the light magenta also adds some warmth to it somehow. Now at this point in the picture, let me interrupt myself. Now I'm trying to fix that with cold gray 3. The other time I used warm gray 3. So now I'm going over that, and to me it looks a little better, but not perfect yet. Now on the broom I used dark Naples ochre, and that was the only color that I used in the first picture. So I did a pretty quick, just first layer, and then I took the raw umber and I'm going around and making some of the shapes more apparent, some of the broom sections outlined a bit. And now this is walnut brown, which is also darker than the raw umber, and I'm making some shadows and trying to add some dimensional feeling to the broom, so it just doesn't look like a flat broom. So it looks like it's pinched around that little band in the center. Now I'm taking the warm gray, and I can get away with it here because it is warm and it almost is brownish. Oh, here's the light red violet. I wanted her broom to match her ensemble. I just filled that in real quick with violet. Sorry, that was light red violet. And then around the perimeter of that little band, I used Delft Blue and blended it a bit. Whoop, back on her face, back on the medium flesh. And now Cold Gray 5. I told you this was bothering me, and I kept going back to it. In the end, I do find a solution. Oop, I'm also putting some of that under her neck, or I should say under her chin, on her neck, to add more dimension. Now I'm using black and adding some details. Now I'm taking crimson, and I wanted to give it the illusion that the hat band was, I don't know if it was patent leather in crimson or just somehow shiny, but I wanted to give that impression that it was like a glossy band in the center. So I left that white, and I'll get back to that in a little bit. Now, on the cover of the book, she has almost coppery hair, but I wanted to give her not quite sky blue hair, but very interesting hair. So to add dimension to it, I put the sky blue first. In the first picture, I just used light ultramarine blue and ended it there, but I started here with sky blue, and the sky blue will end up as some of her highlights. And then I moved up to the light ultramarine blue, and I outlined some of the areas. And the underneath parts of the hair will have a tendency to be darker. I mean, unless it's colored in a very certain way. And as you can see here, I go a little bit darker toward the back too, around her neck, because that would be under her chin. And there would be a shadow from her head. So the pieces are a little bit separated, but I add some more lines and details on my own. Now I added this light cobalt turquoise because I thought it would be so neat to indicate that some of the lights around her were that pretty shiny turquoise color. Now here was another mistake, and I left all these in and I didn't want to redo them. I made her dress magenta, and I didn't like it. So I added some of that magenta to her hair to make it balance a little bit better. Now I'm adding some crimson to the dress, and I'm just like her hat where it droops, our clothing gets wrinkles and it bunches up and it has creases. So what I was trying to do here is give her a magenta dress and then have some indications of crimson here and there. But I didn't end up liking the color with her hat or her hair. I stepped back for a second because the dress was bothering me. So I did the stockings in cadmium yellow lemon, and once again, to make that roundish shape around the edges of her stockings, I made them a little bit darker, and that's permanent green olive. And then I used the light red violet on the stripes. So I go back in, thinking that I'm going to just make the dress a little bit darker and keep it that color. But it didn't work out that way. But I left it in so you could see the whole process. And also to show that you can make a mistake and you can goof it up and still end up with a really decent looking picture. And I think that sometimes you have to go through the mistakes. You have to do it, and you have to see what's good and bad for yourself. You can't just watch somebody painting a beautiful picture, because so much of it is edited out. Now I did her shoes or her booties in just black, and I left two little highlights on each boot where I thought there would be reflections from the stars or the moon. Really basic, nothing fancy there. Now I went in with pink carmine on her lips, and I also did all the outlines where I used the flesh color, because I think it made her look warmer and cuter somehow. Now I'm taking the white and I'm going over that dress to see what it looks like, because sometimes when you use that white as a blender, it really affects the color. Sometimes it makes it more intense, sometimes it doesn't. Now I used that same raw umber that I was adding details to the broom, and I added it to the side of her face to enhance the shadows. Now right about here I decided that I did not like that crimson dress, and I decided that I was going to make it match her hat. So I went in with the purple. That was my bird flying, if you heard something. And I went back and forth with the light red violet and all the different shades of purple. The violet, the mauve, the light red violet. And I just was not loving it. So the darker I was making it, the more I liked it. So I kept going. I went over most of those wrinkles and creases. I didn't cover them completely. Oh, I'm using that permanent green olive again on the edges of her legs. And I went in with the ultramarine and the light ultramarine to make her hair more vibrant. And the darker the dress got, the darker I felt like everything else needed to be. So I went in with those same colors and added them to her hat. Once again, I'm using dark flesh around her nose, her chin, her mouth, and I gave her those little happy lines underneath her eyes. And on the edges of her face again, to make her face seem roundish, I used the darker colors, the darker flesh. I blended in again with white, and I almost forgot that little area underneath her hat, and I thought, wouldn't that be funny to make her into fashion a little bit? So I made that the same color as her stockings. I was going to make it black at first, like a shadow, but I thought that would be cute for her to have that green next to her face. So I'm adding some crimson again. And I sharpened up the white because I thought I was done, and then I looked at it and I realized I wasn't. So I sharpened it up, and I'm going over her face and making it very smooth. So all those layers of the light, the medium, and the dark flesh, and even the cinnamon, which is a really nice color for skin also, are getting blended together. As you can see, you can go right over those pinks and the reds in the mouth and they don't blend. Well, no, they don't blend. They don't spread all over. I'm blending her hair too with that same white. I'm still blending the hair here, but you can see on the hat that I added some white highlights. And I also added curly cues on the ends of some of her pieces of hair. And the darker the hair became and the darker the hat became, the darker I wanted the dress. So it was a good thing to leave all the mistakes in there and not start over, because it shows you, like I said before, you don't have to be afraid of it. You can morph it, you can change it. And it's good to have those mistakes under your belt. This is mauve. I'm going in there, making it darker and darker. And the darker it got, the more I liked it. You can still see some of the crimson and the magenta and the light red through the darker violet and mauve of the dress. I'm going in again. So you can see how many layers and how long it actually takes to make a picture look dimensional. And that's fine. There's no real shortcuts with colored pencils if you want things to look a certain way. I added some of that around her eyes, and I went in once again with that pink carmine around her whole face, anywhere there was skin, because it seemed like it made her look brighter and happier. So I did it on her hands, around her neck, on her mouth. I don't know why it makes it look cuter, but it does. I went around the dress. Actually, I went around almost all the dark parts with a darker shade to make it pop a little bit. Now at this point, the dress was very dark and I thought the hat should be darker, so I decided to make the hat black. And the white lines that I had put on the hat before, when I thought I was finished, inspired me to make the hat look like patent leather. Now I don't really know if it's black patent leather or it's very, very dark purple. I guess it really doesn't matter. But somehow I wanted it to morph into a shiny looking, different type of witch's hat. I'm sorry you can't see this part, but I thought the hat should even be darker. And you can't see what I was doing, but I was basically just outlining. I realized I was out of screen and finally came back in. I'm going over some of the lighter parts, but leaving the very center of the hat a bit lighter because there would be some light coming at her from the front. Outlining the dress again, making it even darker to balance the hat. And going in, I think, the last time with the permanent green olive on the outside edges of her legs. So she's almost done here, and I hope you like this video. And if you do, I hope you hit subscribe below and follow me because I have so much more to come. Here's the first picture, and here's the second. The first picture is cute, but you can see what a little time and patience does to the picture. Now, I made several mistakes here and worked through them, and I left them in there so you could see them on purpose. Now, the hat could have been done, and once again, like I said, I could fuss with this stuff all day long. So I wanted to make it even more patent leather-like, and I wanted it to look like it had texture. So I went in with the black one last time. I went underneath those highlights, meaning those lighter areas that are in violet. I went underneath them so you could really see them stand out. I went underneath them with the black. And the white gel pen sort of blended in more with the picture. Now here I am going over the outline with black now. I had done it before with violet, but the hat's even darker now. So I was finally happy with how it looked. Her hat looked shiny. I don't know why I wanted her to have a glossy patent leather hat, but she felt like she wanted one, so I gave it to her. Going under those violet lines one more time so the highlights really stand out. So finally, I like the hat, I like the dress, I like the shine on the band, and as you can see, it took me a long time, so don't worry if it takes you a long time. It's worth it. Here she is finished. And here was the other picture. Thank you so much for being here. I love doing these videos. I hope you like them. And I hope to see you at the next video. I hope you subscribe below. Thank you very much. See you later. Bye.